Do Black Lives Matter? Yes, of course. Of course. But do they? Yes, they do. Black Lives Matter 100%. I think 99% of the country and the world probably agrees, right? Black Lives Matter. It's horrible if an innocent black person is killed by police or anybody else for no reason or for a bad reason. It's horrible. With the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement has gained a lot of traction. The popularity has skyrocketed in this country, in the world. Actually, we've seen protests around the world, riot, defacement, toppling of statues. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. Do I support Black Lives Matter? I support the slogan Black Lives Matter. I think Black lives are important, just like my life, just like anybody's life, any innocent person's life. Do I support the movement? No. How could I support Black Lives Matter and not the Black Lives Matter movement? Well, we got to understand that those are two completely different things. The slogan Black Lives Matter is calculated, designed to win public support. A lot of sinister organizations do this. One that's relevant today, for example, is Antifa. Antifa. What does it stand for? Anti-fascists. So, if you're against the anti-fascists, what does that make you? A pro-fascist. You're fascist. They do this. So if you're against them, then you're the bad guy. Who else does this? The progressives, the politicians that call themselves progressive. I'm a progressive. What does that mean? They progress society. And if you're against them, you're a recessive, I guess. I don't know. Or here's one of my favorites. The Federal Reserve, the most important bank of America. Do you know that the Federal Reserve is a private bank? It has nothing to do with the government, like at all. But the name was designed to win public support, and Black Lives Matter did the exact same thing. And what concerns me is that supporters are marching. They're marching in the streets and they are unknowingly marching for a racially motivated Marxist anti-Semitic organization. Now, you don't have to take my word for it, but let's look into it. Let's start with, I don't know, one of the three founders of the movement Black Lives Matter. Her name, Patrice Cullors. Actually, it's Patrice Cullors. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to go with Patrice Cullors, because I'm fancy like that. So Patrice Cullors has come out recently. Actually, I don't know if it was recently, but she came out. There's a video I'm going to show you guys real quick. She said that she's a trained organizer, which clearly, because she organized Black Lives Matter. And she's a trained Marxist, along with Alicia, another one of the Black Lives Matter founders. They're trained Marxists. You don't have to believe me? Let's watch it.
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might... I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
Now, there's also this bigger organization called Movement for Black Lives. Patrice Cullors was involved in that one also, and it's basically an umbrella organization for a lot of different black organizations, so they have more power, more support. And Black Lives Matter has come out and say that they support the agenda of the Movement for Black Lives. Now, I'm going to link in the description the website so you could read this yourself, so you don't have to take my word for it, of course, because you should never do that. You should always fact check everything you read, especially today. And we're going to read some of the things that we could see here. If you want to click on the link that I'm going to post, you go to the bottom where it says Invest Divest. Okay, and then it's going to open up a window and you're going to say, okay, and it starts off by talking about the U.S. military-industrial complex. Is that a real thing? I think so. Maybe not, but I think so. Okay, sounds good. Let's keep going. And then, boom. I'm quoting here, approximately $3 billion in U.S. aid is allocated to Israel, a state that practices systematic discrimination and has maintained a military occupation of Palestine for decades. The United States justifies and advances the global war on terror via its allegiance with Israel and is complicit in the genocide, remember that word, genocide, taking place against the Palestinian people. The United States requires Israel to use 75% of all military aid it receives to buy United States made arms. Consequently, every year, billions of dollars are funneled from the United States taxpayers to hundreds of arms corporations who then lobby, campaign, pushing for even more foreign military aid. End quote. They're claiming here, in a sense, that by funding aid to Israel with taxpayer money, the United States government is making you, the taxpayer, complicit in Israel's alleged, I'm gonna add, alleged abuses against the Palestinian people. And then they go off with beautiful, colorful examples such as Israeli soldiers regularly arrest kids as young as 4 years old and they get no due process. I mean, come on. And isn't it funny how they use the word genocide? I told you to remember it. You know, when the word genocide was coined, it was coined to describe the systematic elimination of Jews of Europe. It was coined to describe the Holocaust. So to use it now to describe Jewish action, I think is distasteful. And how did the Black Lives Matter, how did Black Lives Matter become, or not become, but get intertwined with anti-Semitism? Well, there's a very simple answer. Louis Farrakhan is the leader of the Nation of Islam here, and he's been at it for quite a few years. He's an old dude, so he's been spouting, anti-Semitic rhetoric for decades. But I'm not gonna hone in on everything he said because this motherfucker deserves his own video. Okay, so he might get it, but I'm gonna hone in on his speech that he gave in D.C. in 2017. I'm gonna post this in the description too, so you can link to it. Farrakhan told his audiences that Jews who owned a lot of plantations were responsible for undermining black emancipation after the Civil War. He also endorsed the second volume of the anti-Semitic book, that's a little opinion, The Secret Relationship Between Black and Jews, which blames Jews for promoting a myth of black racial inferiority and makes conspiratorial accusations about Jewish involvement in the slave trade and the cotton, textiles, and banking industries. Farrakhan believes that this book should be taught in schools, along with the 1619 Project. It's almost as if these anti-Semitic Marxists are all in it together, and they're trying to indoctrinate young people through public education. I'm telling you, man, that stuff is scary. This guy is sick. So these Black Lives Matter leaders who retweet this guy and support this guy are, clearly anti-Semitic, right? They think Jews are evil. Evil! Luckily, I got my horns removed, so they're not going to come after me right now, but it's sick. And who on the political side, obviously the Democrats, but the progressives are really salivating at the Black Lives Matter movement. They really like it. And one of the most prominent progressives, Bernie Sanders, who admittedly I liked several years ago before he started running for president, he, along with Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who I think is an abomination upon this earth, and Representative Ilhan Omar, who is a smaller abomination, but an abomination nonetheless, they signed a letter stating that the United States should cut all military aid and funding to Israel. It seems to me like what they're intending to do here is they want to indirectly make Israel cease to exist. And once Israel's gone, how long till the next Holocaust? I don't think too long. And yeah, it's just a letter, right? Why are you fear-mongering? It's just a letter. Relax. No. Mr. Bernie Sanders, okay? Bernie Sanders, the comrade of Mr. Putin over there, Comrade Sanders, has begun drafting legislation making United States aid to Israel conditional upon certain things. Let's look at something a little cringe, a little lighter. This is an article written by a Jew who supports Black Lives Matter. Okay, that's fine. Let's see why. Article's called Today Jews Need to Support Black Lives Matter. Tomorrow we can talk about Israel. I couldn't find this title more preposterous. I mean, it's ridiculous. This guy is saying that even though he acknowledges that the Black Lives Matter movement is anti-Semitic and wants Israel to cease to exist, Jews should support the movement because first they came for the blacks. Which, funny enough, is a reference to the famous poem First They Came, which talks about, and it was made of, because of how the Germans acted when the Nazis came to power and came for the Jews. It's really cringy. At one point, this guy says, I take a bullet protecting innocent black lives from police. Get out of here, man. Stop with your virtue signaling. It's sick what you're doing. No, you wouldn't. Why would you take a bullet for someone you don't know? Just like that? There's a lot of cringe in that article, and it concludes by saying that Jews should support Black Lives Matter, and Israel is another story. I mean, that's so stupid. The only thing I can say to that is,
how dare you?
So to conclude, when white people virtue signal, or anyone virtue signal, but right now we're talking about black-white relations. So when white people virtue signal and, for example, call another white person racist for the smallest microaggression, they feel they are divesting themselves, they're separating themselves from their whiteness, that they are becoming a good white instead of bad white, because they assume everyone's a bad white, whatever that means. But you're not divesting yourself from anything. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, or the communists are going to come for you.
We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.